Hello, this is Dr. Jason Munsell. It is about noon on July 17th. Hope that you are doing well. Just a few reminders. Well, first, I will get through got through a handful of the debates dialogues, but it's going to take me some time to read through everything. And I'll send you a slight bit of feedback, depending on what you do in the dialogue. But it's not like a essay where I'm correcting things or anything like that. It's a little bit different type of assignment. It was just really an exercise in you trying to understand the different approaches and sort of the pros and cons to each. So pleased with what I've read so far. For those of you who are really engaged in the forums and Twitter, very pleased with what you're doing. I got a brand new forum topic up this morning, and if you saw my email, you know that I am traveling today. After I finish this and do some packing, I'm going to drive down to Charleston, and I'll be at Folly Beach for the rest of the week. But you'll be obviously hearing from me and getting new online lectures and everything like that, which is online coolness. And also remember that this next big assignment, because you remember we've got 4 big assignments in addition to the tweets and the threads every week, and this one is sort of the prescriptions for what you see as you're going through chapters 3 and 4 and 5 as effective patient health communication and effective provider health communication. So really all I want is a list. Like you get, doctors prescribe you stuff and they, have a little script thing and they, throw some stuff in there and you don't know what the hell it is. I mean, just like, what is this? Is this some sort of, hieroglyphics? But in any case, that's sort of my idea, sort of like bullet points, a list. And the book does this in a way, and I will let you, you can cut and not cut and paste, but ideally you would reflect on things and pick what you think are perhaps the most poignant things. But what I'm thinking about is, for instance, the skills sections I think are really quite good, and I'm not going to cover those. I'll let you read those. But when we move to the collaborative communication model, and then they have communication skill builders on page 55. And so they talk about motivational interviewing, blah, 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 blah. But, they have just from the research of Miller and Rolnick and Fahey and colleagues and Welch and all these folks, I have this sort of bullet points of things that you can do. Set a respectful tone, let the decision maker set the agenda, blah, 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 blah. So that's sort of the thing that I'm thinking about for this big second assignment that's due next Sunday. With that being said, let me quickly try to get through parts of chapter 3. Got a new PowerPoint, has a needle. I love shots. A lot of people are fearful of shots. I love shots. Sometimes when I don't even need a shot, I ask if I can have a shot, just like a, saline or something. I don't know. When I was a kid, I had really bad allergies, and I still have pretty bad allergies. But I had to go get allergy shots every week, and so I find there's comfort in shots. It's like, feels like you're doing something good for your body. Okay, the intro, poor Ben. It's sad. But we've got this this idea. Ben, who has breast cancer. Notice Ben, I think, is a dude. It is not. It's rare, but men can also get breast cancer. I remember I was running in one of the Comm, I think, breast cancer runs several years ago, and there was an older gentleman who had breast cancer, and his T-shirt says, "We have a breasted interest." I thought it was clever. But in any case, So it's just this idea that, Ben didn't tell the doctor about his lump because, as Ben shrugged and said, he didn't ask. So basically the idea is that 26% in a classic study of 800 folks, 26% of the patients said they did not tell the doctor what concerned them most. Why? In this case, Ben felt the doctor did not encourage him to disclose or give him a chance. Oftentimes there are cultural barriers to informing the doctor or other caregivers what's ailing you, particularly if there's a language barrier. And there's also some gender stuff that the book doesn't really get into, but I will here and there. Most of the women said that they, it does talk a little bit about gender, so they could overcome their hesitancy when doctors seemed compassionate and interested, and when they used skilled interpreters as needed. But sometimes, obviously, doctors don't come off as compassionate and interested. So this chapter is really all about effective or potentially effective collaborative health communication, using the collaborative communication model. And it has been shown that if caregivers do communicate more effectively, they are sued less or fewer. Also, it says that we shouldn't jump to conclusions about, thinking that doctors are always just, horrible human beings. They just, it's not always their fault. As you read the patient-caregiver communication, you may be tempted to blame one party or another if the communication seems insensitive or ineffective. Doctors just can't communicate. They don't care. Poor bedside manner. But here, a student who was doing some sort of health comm research says, what I get is that doctors are mean and patients are dumb. It's more complicated than that. And also, there's some place in here that just talks about how, there's cultural, contextual things that happen. We learn the role of the patient and all that jazz. And also the idea is the provider. We're not just talking about doctors. We're talking about a whole physical therapists, technicians, all sorts of paramedics, all over the place. And I already told you my idea of getting shots and sort of how I was socialized. Put the needle through the record and let's rock. I love old vinyl records. We've got a turntable in my entertainment room. Okay, so that was sort of the intro to the big chapter. Medical talk and power differentials. You'll notice if you read this, hopefully you already have read this chapter 3. They start with the traditional sort of following doctor's orders stuff, and then move into the newer sort of collaborative communication model. Although it's not new, it's not like doctors have always been these sort of horrible communicators. But some of the stuff, power, right, the intro, medical talk and power, we oftentimes are socialized to think about complying to the doctor, the ideology of doctor's orders. The doctor said I had to do this. And so, in a sense, when we comply with that, we give up power. So we have a sense that doctors have power over us because only they can prescribe stuff, blah, 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 blah. So this creates this weird power dynamic, even though sometimes we don't follow medical advice. And so, and there's this sense also, and this gets really, really complex. But oftentimes, there are some ideas that we need to have the borders, and if we actually become effective communicators, if doctors have, empathy and have, I think, everything like that, they're not as sciencey. or they're crossing borders. In any case, so we got to think about issues of power. Who has power? What is power? Does the patient have power? Does the provider have power? Do the Rangers have power? The Power Rangers. Some of this, it sort of depends. We think about the patient compliance, but at the same time, physicians should act on their own authority without consultation with their patients about the decisions that need to be made. That is, sometimes that stuff confuses us, and we don't know how to deal with it. So this is what they said. They might go so far, this is the power stuff, as avoid telling patients their diagnosis or their chances of recovery. We've talked about that, or we'll talk about that. They know the stuff. Here's the point. They know the stuff. We think we don't know the stuff, and therefore we sort of give all the power to the caregivers. And this sort of confuses us even more because we don't know what's going on unless we have health literacy, blah, 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 blah. One of the things that's really important is that our talk sort of creates this idea of power dynamics, how we talk about things, who talks and who listens, and I'll say that, talk more about that in a little bit. But at the end of the day, doctors can't do anything to us unless we give permission, obviously. So, generally, again, we tend to think that doctors went to med school, we didn't, so, and we are like little children, tell us what to do. Sometimes they withhold information. I really like the idea. It's really interesting, the therapeutic privilege. But who is really privileged when it comes to all this? Therapeutic privilege is the prerogative sometimes granted to physicians to withhold information from patients if they feel that disclosing the information would do more harm than good. But who is privileged? Money people. It's all about the money. Money, 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 money. Okay, so who talks, who listens? This is really where the rubber meets the road. This is the good stuff. All that other stuff was just setup stuff. So the whole power differential, it's constructed, it's created through our talk, and then we are sort of socialized to see the world, see that relationship in that particular way. And so we tend, for instance, to have asymmetrical modes of talk. Asymmetrical means it's not equal. There's not symmetry there. Doctors tend to do most of the talking and don't always do a lot of the listening. It talks about how some research said that doctors typically asked patients to describe their concerns, but then interrupted the patients within 16 to 18 seconds. Wow. Among those studied, more than 1/3 began medical exams without asking patients about their concerns. But those who didn't ask and therefore didn't listen were 24% less likely than their peers to identify and address patients' main concerns. Okay. So we see that we create this dynamic of I go into the doctor's office, doctor does most of the talking, I just sort of, yeah, this hurts, blah, 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 blah. Or, but we feel as if oftentimes, because we've learned this, that this is not our space, even though we're paying or somebody's paying. So oftentimes we have this idea called, the Doorknob Disclosures. Well, by the way, patients help with this unequal balance because talking and listening says, I can't remember exactly where it is, but 94% of the time, where is this? 94% of the time, there it is, on top of page 47. In one study, patients went silent 94% of the time when physicians began talking, and the patients rarely finished what they had been saying before the interruption. We just say, you're the boss. 94% of the time, if a doctor interrupts, it's not like,